Hello. I wonder how many of you have read a book by Anthony Burgess called 1985. How many of you have actually even heard of it? I doubt very much that many of you have, but for those who have, congratulations. For those who haven't, I have to tell you, it seems to be one of those books that has slipped down the memory hole of history. And I use the expression memory hole deliberately because that's the chute leading to the furnace into which Winston Smith, the main protagonist of the Orwell novel 1984, throws all printed matter that the party wishes to unexist. The novel 1984 starts with just about the best opening of any novel in the English language. It starts, "It was a bright, cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. It's just an amazing opening line. Look, it starts reasonably enough. It's a bright, cold day in April. And then within 14 words, we're brought up sharply to the realization that there's something horribly, horribly wrong. And it's not just one clock, of course, it's all of them. This is a horribly, horribly wrong situation that's throughout society. It's societal, governmental, physical, cultural, and so, of course, spiritual. Anthony Burgess uses that technique to start his own novel. To an extent, his is a lesser talent in this case because his 1985 starts as both a reference to 1984 and a pastiche of it, which means it doesn't have that same feeling of originality and shock that Orwell gave his readers in his book. However, even though it's not so archetypal, Burgess then sets off into his own plot, which is not really a direct parallel to Orwell. So the book doesn't deserve the way it's been ignored. But then a lot of things that aren't deserved happen, don't they? And part of the reason for this might be the structure, as it's really two books inside one set of covers. The book's in two parts. The first is actually a series of scholarly analyses of Orwell's 1984 by Burgess. So when you start to pick it up, it looks like a textbook. Here it is. This is the first part, and that's all essays and discussions by Burgess about 1984. The second half is this short novel with Burgess's take on how he saw society developing from 1978 onwards. Actually, the book was published in 1978, so he was probably writing it in 1977. If you're not interested in the scholarly stuff, you could still be interested in the story and the world that Burgess creates in the second half. The problem is that no one seems to be interested. I suspect that he got this book in just under the wire. And even in 1978, I doubt a lesser known novelist would have found a publisher for this, because it's really quite strong. I do believe it's no longer in print. I'm quite sure there's something on the internet. There'll definitely be something electronic, so you can find a copy of it. But I'm not bothering to look for electronic stuff. I'm going to read directly from the book because that's how Burgess intended people to read it. It's obvious he regarded it as, well, let's put it this way. It's obvious Burgess regarded 1984 as a warning that set people on the right track. And he equally obviously intended his own book as a warning, which he hoped would equally set people on the right track. I differ from him somewhat in that. My opinion is that Orwell was holding up a mirror to the face of the English-speaking people and showing them what they already knew was there. You might not be able to see your own face, but you know it's there. You have a good idea of what's on it and where all the features are. A mirror just fills in the details. But what if someone holds up a mirror which reflects an image of yourself you don't want to see? Well, what you do is you turn your head away, close your eyes. You know the image is there, but you pretend it isn't. 1984 was a vision from Orwell about which many in the West were already afraid. They took to heart what he described because they were ready to confront it. They were made of sterner stuff than us. My opinion is that 1985 has been ignored because it reflects a vision, especially of Britain, but also the wider world, which most of us would prefer not to see. This is how 1985 starts. It was the week before Christmas, Monday midday, mild and muggy, and the muezzins of West London were yodeling about there being no God but Allah. The hero of the book, Bev Jones, is pushing his way through a gang of aggressive African youths, or at least youths in a gang that has an African name, who beat him up and rob him. But they don't hurt him too much. That's probably because they were tired from having gang raped the young son of one of his neighbours, whose body is lying somewhere in the stairwell. Once home, Bev discovers that the hospital in which his wife is being treated has just burnt to the ground, the result of an arson attack, which, considering the recent news from Sweden...
It's not even dark. People look out their windows and see this. The first train of thought, locals are just completely baffled and can't squeeze out a word. A few moments later, they erupt in sheer fury and they scream. Their next thought, is it even safe to leave their homes now? The hooded thugs smash, blow up and burn, mostly cars.
Seems to be prescient to the point of creepiness. Burgess's 1985 world, America gets a brief mention, by the way, so it's included in this vision of the future, is one in which intellectual acuity is suspect, displays of intelligence are discouraged, where individual thought and opinions are smothered in favour of groupthink, where equality of outcome is the ultimate goal, and where workers are told they have rights that they do not. Oh, and where they're given drugs as a substitute for alcohol not being permitted under the semi-Sharia law, which is overtaking the system. To bring that up to the present day, I wonder if anyone's noticed that whereas Marx said that religion was the opiate of the people, in many parts of the Western world now it seems that opiates are the religion of the people. But I digress. Burgess even explains that the Labour Party had renamed itself New Labour. I wonder if Tony Blair read this book. What Burgess didn't predict was the rise of Margaret Thatcher and her campaign against the unions, which held the dam for a while. But holding the dam requires consistency, and that's one of the things we don't have now. Meanwhile, I have another quote which might have some resonance. Let's see, that's the second one. The Arabs were in Britain to stay. They owned al-Dorchester, al-Claridges, al-Browns, various al-Hiltons, and alley day inns. Burgess just couldn't resist a good pun. With soft drinks in the bars and no bacon for breakfast. They owned things that people did not even know they owned, including distilleries and breweries, and in Great Smith Street soon would stand the symbol of their strength, the Masjid al-Haram, or Great Mosque of London. To remind Britain that Islam was not just a faith for the rich, plenty of hard-working Pakistanis and East African Muslims flowed in without hindrance for the adjustment of the immigration laws, which had 2 stringent quota clauses. In favour of the Islamic peoples was a necessary political consequence of Arab financial patronage. Bev, who took a stand against the current political correctness, was depersoned and lost his job. He fell in with a group of similarly homeless drifters with whom he has a conversation. Yeah, that'll be this. Now, these homeless drifters were kids who had dropped out of school, basically. And they dropped out of school because they didn't like what they were being taught. This is what one of them says to him. We got a lousy education. Lousy because it's labour. Lousy because it levels. No clever boys want it, that's for certain. It won't allow because it says they're no good to the workers. Now it follows that the things they won't allow must be the only things worth knowing. You get that? We go to school, we lot, till we're 16. That's the law. OK, we go. And we don't listen to the crap they call sociology and workers' English. We sit at the back and read Latin. There are these anti-state teachers about. At first, I thought that Burgess had it wrong. It sounded ridiculous, his prediction of undereducated and indoctrinated youth regarding the learning of Latin and Greek and the study of history as a revolutionary act. But then I thought, what is Jordan Peterson if not an anti-state teacher? Didn't he lose his status because he wasn't towing the line? And what are his followers doing when they soak in his lessons about the Bible but learning philosophy and psychology? Anyway, so Burgess had it right even there. Bev was eventually arrested for shoplifting, and after a very quick trial in which the verdict was a foregone conclusion and in which he was also accused of a crime he didn't commit, they accused him of having a bloody knife, and he said he hadn't, and he hadn't done anything with the knife and there was no blood on it. But anyway, they decided to convict him and they sent him for re-education. And he goes to the re-education about halfway through the book, but not before he makes a speech to the court pointing out that justice is selectively applied to different people depending on the group to which they belong. Now, he uses the word union because Burgess was envisaging a place where the unions had all the power. But, well, we could just as well use the word religion, can't we? He's told to stop saying certain words. And he responds, words are terrible things, aren't they? Far more deadly than fires allowed to burn while firemen sit on their fundaments. He's referring to the fire that burnt his wife to death. I'm not a type. I'm a human being deprived of work because I stand by a principle. I object to being a unionised sheep. And then he says, justice has been corrupted by syndicalism. Not only justice in the wider sense, but justice as meted out and administered in the courts. Send a union man to jail and you have a strike on your hands. I shan't go on anymore. I'm sure you get the drift. If you can lay your hands on a copy of the book, well, you might find something in a charity shop, but yeah, there's sure to be something electronically as well. You really should have a look at it, and it's not a very long book. I've seen the book reviewed by various people as right-wing garbage and a colossal waste of time. Well, I don't think those are the sort of people with whom I would have much to say, and I think this is a book for our time. Just one thing I have to say. If you do get hold of this book and you do read it, it doesn't have a happy ending. I'm very grateful for financial contributions. But if you don't want to give money, you can still help a lot by sharing this and other videos I've made. Also, remember to check your subscription from time to time, as sometimes subscriptions get erased for one reason or another. Till next time.